Everyone, here to go over the Unit 1 practice test. On Thursday, you were assigned questions 1 through 17, and then tomorrow for Friday, you should be finishing up the packet, and I will post a review answer key Friday afternoon for the second half. So looking through questions 1 through 17, there were some questions that probably require a little bit more talking about than others. So why don't we just go 1 through 17 in order? Remember, you can always pause and go back on the video at any point that you might need to. So in question 1, it gives us the number of nails, how many fit in each box, how many will it fill. You should get D, 46 with 5 left over. If you think back to chapter 1, we were still working with remainders at that point. So we'll notice this a few times throughout this packet where our answer is a remainder as opposed to a decimal or a fraction interpretation. In question number 2, it is talking about the birthday cake. There's 2/5. There's 2/5 of the cake left, and you're going to split that cake into 4 remaining sections. So if you are splitting, that is division, okay? Remember that when we divide with fractions, we want to actually multiply by the opposite. We're going to multiply by 1/4, okay? We can go straight across to give us an answer of 2/20. You'll notice that that particular answer is not there. 2/20 reduces down to 1/10, which would be B on that question. In number 3, it's talking about the price of grapes per pound. To find 3.5 pounds at 178 per pound, you would multiply those two numbers and you would get the answer B, $6.23. In question number 4, what is the value of absolute value of 100? That is D, 100. In question number 5, the GCF of 9 and 15. Remember, with GCF, we break down the number into its primes. We then see what do they have in common. They have a 3, we list it, and that's it. Your answer is 3. So that would have been A for question number 5. If we turn the page to question number 6, it's talking about the yards carried by the football team. It wants you to show the order from fewest yards to most yards, so least to greatest, and that would be B in that question. Number 7, the language is a little tricky. A scuba diver went down 18 meters. What represents the total distance? So just total distance is actually absolute value. So we should have chosen C in this question. I know that we are probably tempted to pick A because it's a -18 and the diver's going down, which makes sense. But it's just talking about what's his distance, and his distance would be 18 meters. It just happens to be below. Question number 8, least common multiple of 2 and 10. Least common multiple, that would be 10, actually. I'll go through the process of the factor trees for this. For least common multiple, we would again break this down into its primes, which 2 already is. This breaks down to 5 and 2. We now go and match up what we can, the 2's, and we also list the leftovers till we get an answer of 10. If you wrote 20, 20 is a common multiple. It is not the least common multiple. Number 9 is one of those tricky ones that's going to take some explanation. It's saying here that Maud uses 3/4 of her allowance to get a massage for 3/5 of an hour. What fraction of her allowance will she need to get a full hour? It says to use the model, completely optional. I'm going to be honest with you, I did not. So I'm looking at this, and I always want to use that self-talk, some estimation ahead of time. If she's using 3/4 of her allowance, she's using most of it. She's only getting 3/5 of an hour, which is only a little bit more than a half an hour. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, she's going to need quite a bit more of her allowance. What fraction of her allowance? It should be bigger than 3/4, okay? So what I did here, I'm going to put this up to the screen in a minute. What I did was I was thinking of this as percentages. I know that 3/4 is 75%. So 75% of her allowance is getting her 3/5 of an hour. And I thought about, okay, well, what is that in minutes? 3/5 of an hour is actually 36 minutes because I took the 60 minutes, I divided it by 5 to get 12, and it's 3/5. So I multiplied that by 3. Hope that makes sense. So I would need, or she would need, 25% of her allowance gets her 12 minutes. We need to get to an hour. So that's times 5. So what I did, my approach for this question, I know it's probably not yours, but I was thinking of this as percentages in chapter 5, but also some of that ratios, equivalent ratios in chapter 5. So what I did here, let's see if I can hold it up. Let's see if you can pause it if you want. What I did here was I realized that 75% gets her 36 minutes. That's the whole, that I basically just converted those fractions. Okay. And then I just worked from there to get a final answer of 1 1/4. 1 1/4 of her allowance would have to be used for an hour. That was a hard one. In my opinion, that was the hardest question on today's assignment. In question number 10, you had to figure out what ordered pair was at 7, -5. Remember that 7, -5, you're counting to the right because it's positive. You're counting down because it's negative. 7, -5. I wrote the wrong answer. It should be E. E is at 7, -5. Yes. Looking at number 11, write an integer that represents the bold words 20 minutes less. That would be a -20. In number 12, Taylor's buying a keyboard, paying with a $50 bill. So you should be using subtraction, 50 minus 32.78, which gives you an answer of $17.22. Number 13, again, was a language question. It's really looking for you to put these in order of greatest population change. It doesn't specify whether it's a growth of change or a loss of change. So really what you're doing here is you're sorting them by absolute value. Okay, and I believe that would give you an order of San Diego, that's our biggest number, followed by Chicago, which is the second biggest number, followed by Detroit, because Detroit would have a greater absolute value than the last one, Philadelphia. Okay, so it's just looking at change, not necessarily positive or negative change. In number 14, if you had a point at at 4, -3, so if I did a quick little, at 4, -3, and we reflected it over both axes, x followed by y, it would go x followed by y, it would be up here. And this right here is quadrant 2, which is a combination of negative, positive. So your answer should be -4, +3 for question number 14, if we were to reflect it over both. Okay? And again, you can always pause and do whatever you need with these videos. In question number 15, Eliza's using a number line to compare 3/10 and -7/10. Use the comparison sign. So again, you would graph them, you would put them where they belong, and then you would have something like this: -7/10 is less than 3/10, or if you had it reversed, 3/10 is greater than -7/10. In question number 16, you are dividing. You would first need to turn that 5.5 into an improper fraction, so 11/2. And then remember, when you divide, you're actually multiplying by the reciprocal. So you should have 11/2 times 3/1, which gives you a final answer of 16.1/2. It would have been 33/2, and then it moves on to 16.1/2. Looking at question number 17, GCF of 92 and 100. Again, if you took a factor tree and broke these all the way down, you would have noticed that they have two 2's in common. Okay, 92 breaks down to I have this wrong, 23. 2, 23, and 2. And 100 breaks down to 2, 2, 5, and 5. So there's two 2's in common, so 2 times 2 is 4. Your final answer would be 4 for number 17. So that's it for today. Again, rewind, go back. I know that question, that number 9 was a tricky one. It was tricky for me. It's tricky for me to try to explain it as well. I really encourage you to think about estimating and like talking it out. Like, what should my answer be? What type of number? Is it bigger? Is it smaller? Because then it kind of helps you make sense of what you're getting. So I will be in touch tomorrow. Remember, your MCAS S is due today. Lots of you have already passed it in. Keep it coming. And I hope you guys are doing well. Get outside. It's nice out. Okay, bye.